speaking of building roads, you know, when you're a prospect and you want to build up to being a top draft pick in the draft, you go through the process of playing on the field, handling your business off of it, and you hope that you've done well enough that when you get to the point of where you're leaving college, you're going to have the opportunity to be seen for the talent that you are, and you do your interviews, your job interviews, and then you get drafted, and your dream of becoming a pro now is solidified. And that's what much of us who enter into sports and athletics, if that's the type of ending that's connected to your sport, that's what you're working towards. One of the things that takes place during the process of getting evaluated and doing your job interviews, sometimes scrutiny becomes a part of and very, very intense analysis on these prospects that are coming out going into the draft. It becomes a thing. Now, this past week, we had a very interesting kind of exchange, and maybe not an exchange, but maybe a take on a guy that we all know, Ryan Clark. He's made media, he's made the headlines, he's gone viral for a take he had on Shedeur Sanders going into this draft. Now, I wanted to get you guys, you know, we've done some shows, you know, we've done shows with Jason Whitlock and other people, and it's called, you know, Speak for Yourself and stuff like that, because you're speaking your truth, you're tackling tough conversations, and we do it without any type of trepidation or shame or anything like that. We just do our jobs and put people up on game on what it really is. I want to get y'all's opinion on what Ryan Clark had to say about Shedeur Sanders and what the representation of who he is, how that may be affecting and hitting people. I want y'all to listen to what he had to say, and then let's have a conversation about it. Go ahead, run it.
But we all know that they plant these certain reports or they say these certain things, and you do hear the word arrogant. Why is he arrogant? Because he won't walk into the meeting and bend the knee, or he won't sit in the meeting and question himself or his abilities or his knowledge and experience in the game. I don't believe that that's arrogance. I want a quarterback that's self-assured. I want a quarterback that could cut the film on, and when you ask him a question about why did you make this mistake, or why did you make this throw, or why was this the right read, I want him to be able to regurgitate that to me like he's in the play at the moment, the same way a coach or an offense coordinator would, because that's what he's going to have to do. And I've had conversations with Shedeur Sanders, and he can do that. We all know that it's not just about him being Deion Sanders' son. It's about the bravado he carries. It's about the fact that he looks a certain way. It is about the fact that the color of his skin sometimes at that position can be questioned.
It's a traditional sport, and I think we will all agree that where the NFL came from, the owners that created the franchises and have built this game into what it is now, the behemoth of a game in the United States and going global, continue to grow globally, there's still a very traditional way of how the game is approached and how the people making decisions, how they may see things. But I'm just curious to you guys, you know, I would pose this question for the conversation. Was this the right take by Ryan Clark? Because I feel like, for what it's worth, is it still a thing? Is race, is being a black quarterback, is that still a thing when we look at how we're measuring a prospect when he's coming out? Is a confident, confident, maybe considered to be brash in how which I don't know how he would be brash in this scenario, but in some cases we've had quarterback prospects coming out that were labeled brash in how they do things. Is this reserved towards, as Ryan Clark maybe alluded to, is this connected to the black quarterback, or is this just the position is always, it's the most praised, it's the most lauded position, considered the most important position in all of the sport? What's your guys' take on it? Do you tend to fall on the side of what Ryan Clark is saying, or is there another way of looking at this?
After you, Plex.
Well, man, it's unfortunate, I think, for Shedeur with everything, you know, that has, you know, transpired from him over the last, 90 days, because we're no longer talking about the great young quarterback that played at Colorado and that played at Jackson State. We're talking about everything else outside of him playing football. And, that's the thing that upsets me, because now we're talking about, the kid that had the Rolls Royce in college. We're talking about the young man that took the podium at the combine with his hat on backwards. We're talking about the 3 diamond necklaces that we had on. We're talking about the rhetoric in which he speaks for himself. We're talking about the bravado in which he carries himself. And it's just painting a bad picture for him. I think for Shedeur right now, the best thing for him is just to get onto a football field and show everybody that he can play the game of football. And it's not the fact that he's a good, great young player. It's the fact that he's telling everybody how good he is. And people don't like that. When you are outside of the norm and outside of what is being traditional, and you start pushing the envelope in different directions, and people haven't seen it, they get uncomfortable with it. It's unconventional. It's not the norm. And for Shedeur moving forward, his rhetoric is not going to change of who he is as a player and as a person. And I think people are going to have to adjust to that, because he's not going to change. And I just hope for him, when he takes the football field, everything that he's saying, that we can put all these things to the side and really just, judge this young man off of what he is able to do on the football field. And now we're talking about everything outside of football. I don't like it.
Does that have to do with his color? Does that have to do with his race? Is it because he's a black quarterback going into the league, or is this a person? Is this a individualized thing, or is this
I don't think it has anything to do with him being black at all. 2 months ago, he was arguably the best quarterback in the draft. Now they're saying things like he's not even in the first round anymore. Based off of what? Based off of what? We're not talking about his football talent. We're talking about him being black and everything that he has done in these meetings with these teams, being unprofessional, being arrogant, and things of that nature. When I tell my son, every time you step on the football field, no matter who you're playing against, you're the best player on the football field today. And don't think anything else about yourself when you play this game.
TJ, I wanted to leave you time to jump into it the way you want to jump into it. What's your take on it?
So for me, I've been, I guess, fortunate enough to be around quite a few number 1 draft picks at quarterback. I was around Joe Burrow. I was around Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, CJ, Jay Daniels, McCarthy, Penix, so forth and so on, right? In however many years. And I'll say this. When we were playing, everything Ryan was saying would be 100% correct. There weren't many black quarterbacks when we were playing. And if you were a black quarterback, all they questioned were you weren't smart enough to play the position. You couldn't process fast enough like the white guys. That's a fact. It was unsaid, but that was a fact. I don't believe that's the case anymore. There's so many black quarterbacks that have come in and played extremely well that I don't believe the race has anything to do with it. I believe Deion Sanders being his dad has something to do with it. That's what it is. It's prime being his. You want your quarterback to be self-assured. I want every player on my team to be self-assured. I want every player on my team to walk in with confidence. I want every player on my team to be able to tell me why we running this play, because we expect this coverage. When they're in this coverage or this front, we want to run this gap scheme. When they're in this coverage, we want to run this concept. I want every player on my team to be able to regurgitate that, because if that's the case, I have a smart team. Deion being his father, you think he going to walk in there with his head down or he going to walk in there with his chin up? This boy been living with his father his entire life. He wake up confident. He go to bed confident. Everything he do, he's believing in himself because he was bred that way. Now, some of these coaches, they smut, they put dirt on these kids' names because they really like them. But then you still have some of these coaches that are old school that think back when we played. He can't process. He's not smart. He's cocky. And so there's still some of those coaches. They say that
about all of us. They say that about all of us because
you
and I both know we got stories about how I even like for me personally, that was brought my way.
We've talked about that.
And we've talked about it.
And this is the thing, though. When a kid walks around with no confidence, the coach hates it. But when you walk around with too much confidence, they hate it. I can't help that my confidence brings out the insecurity in you. I can't control that. That the way that I carry myself brings out an insecurity in you because I believe in myself to the fullest. And so the only way he can shut this up is when he gets drafted. You go out there and play well. You go out there and show that you're a leader. You go out there and show that your confidence, it shouldn't offend you. It's part of why he is who he is. And you got to understand this is all coming because his last name is Sanders and his father's first name is Deion.
Yeah. I think the uncomfortable feelings about Deion Sanders and how he's done things, I mean, it's always been very well documented from the way he got drafted, and the things that Deion has had to say, his approach to the games. It's funny because he's one of the most popular, if not most recognizable, popular football players, maybe even athletes of all time. And he's celebrated, and he's also very, very hated for how he does things. People who call their shot before they do it, and then they go do it. You get both sides of the coin on how people view you. And Deion Sanders has always been able to represent himself in a way where he definitely pushes the envelope of how you view him, but he also delivers you something that is undeniable in what it is that he brings to the table. Now Shedeur Sanders in the same situation, and people will find all kinds of different ways to maybe disparage what it is that Shedeur Sanders does that they don't like. But when I look at this situation and how it played out, for one, everybody gets scrutinized. Everybody gets criticisms. This is where the media, this is where the storylines are created about how organizations possibly feel about these prospects. We've seen it as long as the game has been around. I'd say the only person I didn't see fall victim to the amount of intense scrutiny, like intense scrutiny for the position was probably RG3. I remember when we were covering him leading up to the draft when I was doing local radio in Washington, you did not see one report come out on RG3 where there was a criticism towards him as to what it would be in him translating into the pro game. And that
could it be because he won the Heisman?
It was the same draft that Andrew Luck was in. Keep that in mind.
But RG3 was a Heisman Trophy winner.
He did win the Heisman, but I think many, like all the Heisman quarterbacks that have come out in the draft have been criticized. There have been things that have been said about them in terms of whatever their development is, something that may have taken place off the field. I mean, you can look at they're going to look at every single detail. See,
there's going to be some criticism, but will there be criticism that we believe is because he is a black quarterback? RG3 didn't have that. Could it be because he was a Heisman Trophy winner? Caleb Williams didn't have that. Could it be because he was a Heisman Trophy winner? I mean, there's just different layers.
But Caleb Williams came under intense scrutiny. And from the fingernail polish to the way, I mean, I was even a part of that group of people that were like, does that translate to the pro level?
But he came under scrutiny, but did he come under scrutiny because he was a black quarterback?
Okay,
that's the point.
And I think the point of what I'm saying is I don't think it mattered. I don't think it matters. I think it's more you can't make these judgments in a vacuum, right? Like, if you think about it, the 2 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl this year were what? They were black quarterbacks. So, and the quarterback that won the Super Bowl the year before, black quarterback. And the year before, black quarterback. In fact, the best quarterback in the league right now, hands down, bodies apart from the rest of the quarterback group, is a black quarterback. So
I don't know if I agree with that, but go ahead.
Why is that? Who's better than Patrick Mahomes?
I just think Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, they right there. I don't think you give me any of those quarterbacks, any of those 3 that I named, and I'm throwing Lamar in there now. Those 4. Those are the 4 best quarterbacks in the league, and I don't think one is head and shoulders better than the other. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'll say this to that point, because, I mean, Burrow's numbers were fire. They 100% fire, and you can't dispute what his body of work is. As far as Josh Allen, I think Josh Allen is a fine quarterback and continues to improve, and he's playing great football. Lamar Jackson, same thing, and he's won the MVP, and it's proven that he's been a valuable player to his team. But best quarterback, I'm all the way talking Patrick Mahomes. I'm not deviating from that. I'm putting 10 toes down on that, and I'm saying you can't go against the grain on that. That man is winning championships no matter what. And even if that is the discussion point, if you look at Joe Burrow is the same dude that Shedeur Sanders is. So if you're going to have scrutiny about fashion, about chains and how didn't they rob his crib and take a whole bunch of his stuff? Dude is as swagged out as it gets. His approach to what he does is as swagged out as it gets.
Crazy confident in himself.
His bravado is very, very high. It's very high. So I don't look at it and I say in a vacuum or in this as it applies to all this race of player, this is how I'm looking at what they're doing, because we haven't heard anything about Cam Ward. Cam Ward is supposed to be the number 1, number 2 prospect quarterback. Okay, so is that good or is that bad? Is that good or is that bad?
There's nothing to report on Cam Ward except for the way that he has played the quarterback position at the University of Miami. So there's no. We don't know anything about Cam Ward. So there's nothing to talk about.
So the media cannot scrutinize Cam Ward because he said nothing. Some people would say that that's a good thing. It's better to be seen, not heard. But for me, I don't look at that as a right or a wrong. If you're saying what you feel, and you're saying it to the media, and that's what you're putting out there for consumption, and that's how you've always been, that's not a wrong way to approach what you're doing.
We're not
if you're
saying
a Cam
that it
Ward,
is.
I know that, but what I'm saying is the coverage of it says that we're picking sides here, and then picking a side as to whether you like a player who decides to market and promote themselves in the way that Shedeur Sanders is somehow, some way now being equated to the color of his skin. If he was what? So we're saying if he was a white quarterback, I'm going to say it because this is what people are probably thinking. Are we saying because he was a white quarterback and he exercised those same traits and handled his interviews and said the same things that Shedeur Sanders is saying, that now all of a sudden it isn't, what is it? What is it viewed as? Because you're not a black quarterback. So if you're exercising the same bravado that Shedeur Sanders has coming into this, I mean, wasn't Johnny Manziel bravado? Isn't that as bravado as it gets? And he took on intense scrutiny leading up to his draft. I just wonder, should this be considered a black thing? Is this something that just comes with black athletes? I feel like that's what it is.
It's black athletes with the last name Sanders, bro.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Right.
Think about this. Whatever team Shedeur gets drafted to, that coach is on pins and needles hoping that Prime doesn't criticize him, that Prime doesn't come for his job. He on pins and needles. That plays a part into it. Now that Deion is a coach and he's done extremely well at Colorado and Jackson State, they nervous about that. I would only go coach in the league if I can coach my son. Who wants that on their team when you're not secure. If you're picking high in the draft, you're not secure in your job. And so they don't want that element in the background. Man, you think they're going to hire Deion? They don't want that. It's survival of the fittest. We trying to take care of ourselves and be self-sufficient to where, man, I can't have Deion criticizing the way we're utilizing his son. I can't have him criticizing the way our system is offensively. That play, because he has such a huge voice and platform.
You're uncovering something deeper now. Now we're getting to the this has to be what it is, right? I mean, if you think about Aaron Rodgers, what did Aaron Rodgers do? Aaron Rodgers is probably the reason why Mike McCarthy lost his job in Green Bay. Right, Aaron Rodgers is 100% the reason why my guy just lost it. Salah lost it in New York, right? So if you have now, to me, this is where it makes sense. If I have somebody who's coming in with the type of pool and the type of range and influence that Shedeur Sanders has, not to mention it goes well over the top, and that snowball effect could be something serious if Deion gets involved. If I don't have the type of career that I need to be having, it's not going to be on Shedeur Sanders. It's going to be on that coach. It's going to be on that GM. It's going to be on that organization. And how are you going to go against that reach and that influence of what the Sanders family holds within this industry, within this culture? How are you going to be able to stand up to that? That, to me, that has to be what the real issue here is. It's not, to me, it's not a color thing. It's a power thing. If I can't control this kid when he comes in, if what you're saying, my undertones that I read from this is that it's a control thing. The reason why his bravado bothers you, or the reason why you're not as high on him, or may want to make it so that you can pass up on him and not get judged for it, will 100% be based upon the idea that you can't control the narrative if it doesn't go the way that you want it to go, and that could cost you your job as a scout. It could cost you your job as a GM. It could cost you your job as a head coach. To me, that's what I find to be the real issue here. Let's talk about what that looks like versus just making it about, well, he's a black quarterback that has a belief in himself, and this is how he approaches it, and we don't like it. I don't think that's it.
So many layers to all of this with him, going into the draft. I would have to assume that this man has a very IQ playing the quarterback position, being that his dad is basically a defensive-minded coach and understanding coverages and knowing where the ball is going. Having Shedeur sitting in a meeting with the offensive coordinator in the NFL, and Shedeur saying, "Well, I was always taught that the ball is supposed to go here in this coverage," things of that nature. And now, what is going to be the scouting process for NFL teams moving forward with players coming from Colorado? Is that affected now if he does not go in and play well, or go out and have a good rookie season? How does that affect Deion moving forward, with players coming out of his program going to the next level? So there's so many different layers to this whole thing. I agree with TJ. Some of the things that Ryan said, he was speaking from our era of football. I totally agree with that and what he was saying. So the best thing for this young man right now, man, is just to get on the football field and just see if he can play the position.